So, people, it's another episode of The Social Worker and the Mentor. Listen, last episode was amazing, you know.
Oh, yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, we still got the two powerhouses here. We've got John and Ruth, who are still here. I think, John and Ruth, introduce yourself again, please. I know people know who you are, but introduce yourself again, please.
No problem. So I'm John McGowan. I'm the General Secretary of the Social Workers Union, the largest specialist union for social workers. I'm also a lecturer with Open University 1 day a week, and I'm still registered as a social worker. My background's in children and families, and I think I qualified in the late 90s, so I've been around as a social worker for a while.
Fantastic. Ruth?
Hello, I'm Ruth Allen and I am the Chief Executive at the British Association of Social Workers, BASW. Delighted to be here, also registered social worker, and I go back to qualifying in 1994. Way back when.
Before we start, I think one thing I wanted to ask both of you last time, but I'll ask you this time. How was it when you first started? What was it like? Were you scared? Were you excited? When
you first qualified?
It was something I really look forward to. I mean, I won't go into my own background, but my parents were foster carers, so I was kind of brought up with social work all around me.
Right. Okay.
I always dreamt about being a social worker, but at the end of the day, that I didn't have the qualifications, leaving school in a working class community, and then I fought hard to get my qualifications. So when it happened, I was lucky, and I use that term because I was in a really nurturing team. So I moved into that team that were able to build my skills and build my confidence in my report writing. I don't think you've got the luxury of that anymore. So, and so I think the passion's still there,
right.
Because principally, why do you do social work? You want to achieve change, don't you?
Yeah.
You want to promote that difference. And if you lose that, then you shouldn't be in social work.
Yeah.
You need to care. So
absolutely. Ruth?
Ruth, what was it like?
So I qualified in 94. I'd done a master's at Sussex University, so I was in my mid-20s. And I actually came into social work a little bit of a circuitous route. I wanted to work in international development work, actually.
Okay.
I'd studied geography.
Okay.
As I was interested in sociology, urban geography, the world.
Social work and geography, that's...
It really works.
Yeah.
That's another podcast. We could do that one. And then I decided that actually what I really wanted to do was to make a difference here in the UK, in England. I was living in London at the time. And I came into quite a specialised role when I first qualified, chose it quite carefully. And it was a specialist homelessness service, health and homelessness service in the East End of London, outreach, and it was social work, social care, psychology, nursing, addiction services, community outreach services, street outreach. It was a real wraparound service for people in street homeless and hostel work. And I worked in East London in that role and in a number of other roles for about 10 years, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Another quick question.
I've got a question as well. Go on, man.
Another quick question I want to ask both of you as well. Like any professional practitioner, but I know with social work, culture, locations, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, London, Wales. I mean, so as a social worker living in a different part of the UK or a different part of the world, how important and what are the risks and the pressures and things you go through on a daily basis? How much does that play in being a social worker and your work and the cultures of families that you're working with? So I don't know. I'm going to Edinburgh tomorrow, Scotland. I've never been. In fact, I've never met a social worker from Ireland, but I'm just interested to know, how has it been a social worker in Ireland? How has it been a social worker in Leeds or Huddersfield or Manchester?
Working different parts of the world,
different parts of the world,
in the country.
How is that?
Well, we do a lot of work in BASW and SWU as well as also involved in kind of international social work. It's one of the benefits of being involved with BASW, whether you're a member or staff, you get to see the contrast. So that's across the UK. Social work is different in the different bits of the UK. Completely devolved policies. What John's colleagues in Scotland are working with policy-wise is distinctive to Scotland.
Yeah.
And it's the same for Northern Ireland and Wales. Wales is a bit more connected to England. And then the cultures of communities, the nature of communities, obviously different. And then internationally, social work is different in every nation, actually. But there's an international definition that we work with. I can't quote it to you without reading it off the phone. But anyway, it's an international profession. There's an international definition, and it's great to work with. There's 148 associations around the world, and to work with colleagues and see social work in different places. Obviously across Europe, where that's the region that we're in, so we do a lot of work there. But then, what can we learn from? I was talking to one of our members who was recently doing some educational work exchange in Burundi.
Okay.
And what can you learn from these different nations from all over the world? So we can get really parochial in the UK about what social work is, parochial in England, parochial in London, where we are now, parochial in the London borough of. Yeah. But actually, we need to think about the fact we're part of a much bigger profession, lots of shared values.
Yeah. It definitely goes back as what is social work, because we all work in different environments and different interventions. And I'll just give you a quick story that principally I've worked in rural environments, so I have worked on islands and in small Scottish communities. And I remember when I transferred from a city centre team in Edinburgh, my last case was dealing with a knife crime, and quite a horrendous one. So I was doing all the reports and working with the young person. Then I moved to a small island, and my first case was someone who took a tractor on a joyride. And I'm in a field.
What?
The thing is, what's quite interesting.
But I'm still safeguarding, man.
Of course it is. Major safeguarding.
Major safeguarding.
As a consequence was equally the same, that they wanted this boy going in front of a children's hearing. They wanted that punitive model. And I'm like, wait a minute. Who left the keys in the tractor? The boy's 14. Turning the key is, to me, it's not a high level crime. But for a small island community, it was. So there's different thresholds as well. But just
that's true.
This is reminding me, I'm watching Shetland at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Does it have enough crime through that? Yeah.
There's a death every episode, so it must be this place to live.
What I want to ask you both. So I want to ask you, Ruth, first. So in terms of your journey into BASW, in terms of your role, what was your journey from practice and then now to BASW? What was the journey for you going through?
So I was immediately before doing this job, so 7 years ago now, because I've been at BASW a nice long time. I was a director of social work for a big mental health trust in London.
Okay.
So my journey was one of I was in direct practice, and then I was in kind of management, very close to practice, and that was over a period of about 10 years. Then I went into a role as a director of social care in a local authority. So it's kind of, in a way, a bit traditional, bit, sort of like kind of a bit greasy Polish. But always looking for jobs where I thought I could work on the real sort of essence of social work, where I could promote the essence of social work. And so I did some postgraduate study. I did a doctorate. I got involved in some research work.
Okay.
So
veteran.
Veteran. I totally claim that. That's fine.
I saw you should.
And a lot of a lot of hard work actually to kind of, because actually it's interesting around research, for instance. Now, although it is difficult for social workers to get into research roles, there is much more support.
Well, why is that though?
Why is it difficult?
Yeah, to get into the research side, which I think is quite important.
Well, you need the
infrastructure.
You need a kind of infrastructure to help people to support people to do PhDs, or to get involved with research teams and get some experience, or to, obviously if you get a job within a university, then that's a potential route for you. But if you want to stay in practice and also get involved in research in a broader sense, bring your valuable experience of day to day into research, you need help with that. It needs to be funded. And so there is more funding around in England, which is, so there are routes in.
Yeah.
But it was like, I just kind of did it on top of my full-time job.
10 years, I'm the baby social worker here. Gosh.
So anyway, and I worked in the local authority. I worked for the NHS before, and I worked a bit for a little bit for government on some policy implementation work. All social work, all different bits of the UK, different bits of England, and then I got the job in BASW, which was a bit of a surprise, but it was good. It was a good surprise.
Why were you surprised?
Well, I don't know, because I wasn't planning to go and get a job with BASW, and it just came up. And so I went for it, as you do. And I was a long-time member of BASW, and I was very supportive of the need to keep developing the profession. So I wasn't that active, to be honest, but I absolutely came with this sense, I can do something with this. I can take this somewhere. This is right for me, right in my life. And let's get back to the absolute heart of social work and the heart of BASW. But I've been a long-standing member and always supported. And I've got this interest in international stuff, and the bit of BASW that was also very interesting to me.
So guys, you know what you need to do, you need to follow Ruth on Twitter. That's what I'm saying to you. Follow Ruth on Twitter.
I better get a bit more active.
Get them conversations
going.
John, your route to become General Secretary?
Yeah, so principally, since qualifying, I've really worked in children and families and safeguarding, touched on some management, worked in cities, I worked in rural environments. I became a training manager as well, where I'm a practice teacher and practice assessor, and I'm lecturing. And I've been involved with BASW for a number of years. Since qualifying, I was a non-executive director, so I was on the board of BASW, and I was on the board of BASW for about 4 years when we realised there was a need for a union for all different reasons. So we decided at the time, why don't we set a union up? All the board members will think, that's a good idea. How do we go about it? So that journey started. We set up the union. We employed our first General Secretary, who was a former Labour MP, so he was our first General Secretary, and I was on the board for the union. And really, I didn't put myself forward to be General Secretary. I was encouraged by the board. And I says, I don't really want to do it. And I thought about it, so I put myself forward. I'm happy to say that I'm elected by the members. So
that's brilliant,
so the members have elected me. And I was re-elected in 2000 and I was re-elected just recently, actually, for another term, unopposed. So nobody came forward.
How long do you normally be in post for?
Well, you're elected for a 5-year period.
Okay.
So it's a huge operational task. So to me, it was a big learning curve, because I've been involved with unions nearly all my working life from other ones. But to actually lead a union, I think, has been great. Just for your listeners and your viewers. We're also involved in the General Federation of Trade Unions, so I'm on their executive board, and we've got 600,000 members with 30 trade unions. So if you think about the specialist unions like the Footballers Association, the Bakers Unions, the psychological unions,
massive.
So quite active.
We were talking in the last episode about the amount of non-social workers who are not joined to any union, and you actually said something that maybe you can let our audience know as well. What is the purpose of the union? What do they do? What can they do? And what can they achieve for individual social workers' support?
Good. Well, I suppose the principal view would be that a union's there to protect you in the workplace, make sure you have the adequate rights and adequate safety controls, and be there to represent you. So that's why you would join a union. Somebody's got your back. It's a collective decision, and you're in like-minded people. So, but that's just one of the journey. The other part has been part of the union is that you're part of a process of activism. You know, you're encouraging change. You're promoting decisions as a union member. You're involved with a bigger collective of like-minded people. So, principally, a union is there to protect you, to look after you, but it's also there to promote you and to make sure you've got all the development parts, and to be more political in your push. Again, that political role in social work is, to me, it was dropped off the learning a number of years ago, but it's getting back in again. We're in social work because we want to promote change. So
it's brilliant.
So I'm gonna ask one more question.
Go on. Bro, I want to get to the meaty bit, man.
No. So
go on.
So media, right? Because obviously it goes, like reputation.
Yeah.
You know what people think of. Everyone's got an opinion. Everyone thinks they're in charge, or they know best what but media. So one of the things I don't like as a professional, and it bothers me. Now it really, really bothers me. And one day I actually done a case study, and I sat at home one day. Seriously, you could actually go and Google and type in social worker. Does the media like social workers?
Yeah.
I'm actually being serious with you right now, right? Yeah. You could actually type it in, and it has a very bad rep. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? Like why is that? So I've done more research, so I go into that, maybe like The Guardian, The Sun, The Daily Mail, all these different newspapers and everything like that, even on Twitter. And it's almost like social work has a very negative
the media coverage
reputation,
of us.
and it's actually very unfair. It's unfair. I think it's quite toxic from a media point of view. John, as me and you were talking about before, there are so many great, fantastic stories.
And social workers.
Fantastic social work where, there's been some very vulnerable safeguarding cases that the social worker or the union or the authority have been able to overcome. But there just still seems to be this, from radio, from TV. Why is that, guys? And how do we change that? Because
I think it feeds into the question about the media campaign.
It's concerning, yeah.
What,
sorry if I put you on the spot.
Yeah,
sorry,
no, but it's an important question because part of the media campaign, what our reputation? I mean, it's crap.
Well, it's interesting. Do you know what's one thing that's really interesting about it? Because, I mean, obviously there is lots of bad coverage of social work, and we can talk about the different elements of that. It tends to be in particular parts of social work. It tends to be in children and families. Right. It's not absolutely exclusively, but it is particular in children and families. I think it's important to maybe have a think about why that is. Most other kinds of social work tend to go pretty much under the radar. They don't get a lot of coverage. Yeah. But certainly you don't get the scandals. And we can understand why that might be, why the public gets so connected and why the press gets so connected. And there's been some terrible reporting and some terrible media witch hunts, really, with, Victoria Clambier and
Baby P.
Peter Connolly, etc. There's really high profile ones. And actually it goes back even further. It goes back to sort of the 70s and 80s and the birth of the UK sort of social work, really modern social work. So we talk about why that is. One thing I would say is that there's been some research done that suggests that social workers think that the media image of them and the public image of them is worse than it actually is. So we internalise some of that negativity. And maybe, I mean, you do, it's human nature, isn't it? Yeah. You read something awful about social work, so it's my profession, and it stays with you. And it's really hard and demotivating for people. So it's very important that we try and change it. And John and I are going to talk about things that we're doing to try and change that. So just wanted to say that it may not, what people think of social workers overall might not be as bad as you think it is. Right. And there might, and the media coverage that is there, let's think about why it's so bad the poor coverage in particular parts of social work as well. And I worked in mental health most of my working life as a practitioner. Mental health social work is just kind of a bit, it's just under the radar. And it doesn't occasionally gets some coverage. It doesn't tend to get very negative coverage.
So even now, since post-COVID, where mental health is it's going through the roof right now, so even the last 4 years.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I mean, and it's a problem that social work doesn't get the positive coverage as well. It's a different problem. Yeah. So we want to talk about that as well. How do we get positive coverage so it's not so under the radar?
Well, this is the thing, Ruth and John, because when me and Rob started the podcast, I mean, when Rob actually said, Nana, it'd be good if me and him did a joint podcast. And I said to him, are you mad? Do you know what job I do? I'm a social worker. The coverage is quite poor. So I was very, very kind of worried about putting myself out there. But actually...
I said, because I recognised that. And I thought, no.
And I said, Rob, I'm shook, But then when we got into the studio, it was brilliant. And I think, we've been going for a year, it'll be 2 years next year. And I think through my own end, trying to represent social work, in the episodes, have been trying to get people to understand that social work is not what you always see on TV. Because we're active on TikTok and YouTube and people are like, oh yeah, but you guys take children away. And it's like, no, I really try and explain to people that actually there's a process. And I think why, the media campaign is important is because actually it's about explaining to people that actually there is good social work out there. There's good and bad in every single job. Yes, children and families, we're not disputing that there's child death, but actually it's not just a social worker who's working with the family. There's other professionals. So, we've really, really been trying. And I think that's why I think the media coverage and campaign is very, very important. Absolutely. And I think I'll say to people that, BASW are doing a lot of work in terms of the media coverage to kind of show that there's good practitioners who are out there. And that our job is, we're trying to do what we can with the means at hand that we can.
I think also it's this word media. I suppose, what do we mean by the media? Because the media covers the press, it covers the radio, it covers television as well. And I think that unfortunately the far and few between. But I think now the light bulbs came on with the regulators, and just as an overview, there's a number. So in the press you've got Impress and Ipso. Ipso's probably the big one that covers
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
newspapers.
Yeah.
Apart from, actually, I think it's the Guardian and the London Standard I've not signed up, but every other newspaper. Impress.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
So Impress covers a lot of the magazines you get, or these free newspapers for
Yeah.
the door, and there's Ofcom who cover the the general
Yeah,
ones.
general stuff.
And I think that's a target that they've not really had social workers have not really had an opportunity to raise that in a high level to the regulators, and that work's going on now.
Right.
So behind the scenes, you'll see. I think it's Impress have got guidelines for journalists now, so you could put that on your web link. You could read that. You could do that. Ipso have now put together a webinar to help social workers. If you see something in the media, or if it's about you, what can you do about it? And they
good
can follow
point,
that
yes.
through from
Right,
the moment you read that.
yes.
Anything, they can read anything.
Okay.
And along with BASW, we've just started discussions with Ofcom. But for me, the work starts earlier. So we've engaged with the National Union of Journalists, because that's the future reporters, isn't
Yeah.
it? So their ethics committee are keen on adopting our proposal for how you should report on social work. So all that work's happening. There's still a
That's
long
really
way
good to
go,
hear.
so,
That's
uh,
very,
it's
very
quite
good to
important,
hear.
actually, yeah.
I want to come to Ruth. So Ruth, the media campaign or media, what is the next steps that BASW are taking at the moment?
Well, there's two. There's a few different elements. Or
Yeah.
Two main elements. One is obviously working with SWU on the work with the regulators and the NUJ to working together to kind of ensure that the journalists, certainly journalists of the future and the journalists now, know what's expected actually from the profession, and hopefully through
Brilliant.
that they will be able to build better coverage. They will get better stories. It'll be better journalism. It doesn't have to. Nobody's asking for mainstream media to kind of paint social workers kind of without fault.
Yeah.
You know, we want it to be honest. We just want it to be real
Yes.
and accurate, and not basically scapegoating. What we've seen far
the
too
word.
much of
Yes.
is
Scapegoat.
scapegoating
Yes.
for
Yes,
that's the word.
individual
Yes.
social workers or social workers in general, and really victimising some individuals, which we all know about from some of the sort of tragedies that have happened. And the tragedy is a tragedy. If a child dies, if an adult is harmed, whatever it is, it should be reported, and the details, and there should be accountability.
Yes.
But it's got to
Yeah.
be fair. Like it is, like anybody expects that, and no individual should be picked off. So supporting that work, and then on the other side, BASW, also working with SWU on this, BASW has developed the Journalism Awards,
Yes.
for which you were shortlisted last year
nominated?
in 2022.
Do you know what I'm going to lie to you, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was nervous, you know.
I was nervous as well, you know.
No, you was excited. I was nervous. Like, I'll be honest with you. Can I be honest with you? When we was there, I was thinking, right, what am I doing here? Like, I was, because, you know, like, I was just.
I think I overdressed.
No, I was looking at everyone, I was thinking, they look like seasons.
Yeah.
Seasons. Like, you know, like years.
And it's like, it's me and you.
And we've only been here 5 minutes. And I thought, wow. And, but you know, especially you guys, you know, you made us feel welcome and comfortable. And they just said before, it's a community.
It is.
You know, and it's a community of, okay, how can we work together? How can we support each other? And for me, personally, right, that meant more to me than the award, actually, you know. So I was just happy to, you know, link with you guys and with other social workers, another organisation. And that's what it's about. It's about building the community. But yeah, yes.
Yeah. But I want to ask you, Ruth, so the question is, so why did the BASW journalism rules come about? What was the origin? I know the reason, but for the viewers who don't know, what was the reason why it came about?
Well, I guess for the reason why we're having this discussion, really, that we're all, we're concerned here. We've got a community of social workers who are concerned that this could be different. We could have much better coverage in the media. There is no we should be pushing back against this. That was John's work that John's particularly led on, where we're pushing back against the poor coverage and the misinformation. But but also to encourage more coverage. We shouldn't be afraid as social workers about seeing ourselves in the media. I think sometimes if we get nervous about it, and it's almost like we'd rather see nothing.
Yeah.
We can't. That doesn't work for us as a profession. Doesn't work for our relationship with the public. It doesn't work for, we need to encourage people to come into the profession. So we've got to be visible, whether it's in the whether it's in the print press, whether it's on TV, on radio, and podcasts, etc.
Yeah.
So we want to be, kind of in it. We don't want to be like outside of it. So we want to encourage the best possible journalism. So we thought, and there's nothing like this. Nobody else is doing it. Not in the UK.
Yeah.
And we did the first time last year. So
Yeah.
the awards were in June 23 in Birmingham, and next year we'll be up in Edinburgh, as part of our conference there. As part of our conference there, we'll be having the second awards. We've actually opened up another category for drama representation.
My God!
No, I mean obviously it's not journalism as such, but it's another missing category. So.
Anyway, we'll talk after.
Yeah. I know where you're going. Yeah.
So, and just to say, we've got so we're collaborating on this. So John's on the panel, part of the choosing. We've got other social workers involved, and then we've also got journalists.
Yeah.
So we've got very experienced journalists who know BASW really well and who've written, who have written and still write for major publications, major radio outlets. So it's informed by social work and by journalism and by the voice of lived experience. So
Excellent.
having people with lived experience also, because at the end of the day, they are people using services, and they're also, if you like, the public. So what do they want to see, and what do they think is important?
There's also another important part, because I was on the judging panel last year, and there was the content was amazing, and then it's lost in the forums, everything that was going on. So it was nice to have a look at it in a collective sense. It was, the quality was so high.
Yeah.
But then people say, well, actually, people don't really talk about social work in a positive way, but it was there.
Yeah, it was.
There,
So. But guys, is it arrogance or ignorance on the media's mindset or point of view?
You know what?
That they don't want to that they don't want to.
You know what I'm going to
share
say,
the
innit?
good light and the tremendous work and the tremendous story.
I'm going to let Ruth and John
That's
answer,
what's
and
happening.
I'm going to answer, but you know I'm going to say it.
Well, I mean, I would say that certainly there's a lot of kind of lazy journalism that is like, we can make a real scandal story out of this and make a shock, that's a shock horror headline, you know, and get people, and actually literally get people riled up, and see a big reaction in the public, and then those stories roll, because that's, I mean, the press works by, news works by one, it starts somewhere and then it rolls and then it's like a snowball. So I actually think that's a really significant thing, and the death of a child is so awful and so, at a human level, so hard to process. That unfortunately, and the circumstances in which that happens, and imagining parents who do this, that, or the other, or imagining a professional that doesn't protect and is supposed to protect. It's a really it's those things are important, but it's a really easy story to write, to be honest.
That's right.
And it's not actually understanding what's really going
You're right.
on.
That's right.
You're right. Lazy.
Yeah.
But there's also the positive stories, and I'll expand on this, but I've got a soft spot for David Cameron. I know you're going, no, David Cameron is back in the cabinet.
Him.
But a number of years ago, he was talking positive about social work. I mean, he's been open about it, so I'm happy to share. But
Used to be my neighbour, you know.
Well, his own family was involved. They had to use the services of social work, and he went on to speak about just what a great, it helped them make sense of it, their assessment and the services, and what a great profession. So we need, I'm not saying David Cameron, but these kind of huge figures in public life to talk about the services of
being an advocate.
And I think it's changed. Actually, I do think there have been changes. So although there's much further to go, I think the coverage, because we monitor it really carefully. We've got a press officer.
You do.
So we monitor it, and the coverage is better than it was 10, 15 years ago when it was appalling. So there is progress being made on the difficult stuff, and there's a bit more about the good stuff. And as John was saying, we found some excellent pieces when we were getting the nominations together. So it is out there, something to build on.
I want to ask you guys, about social media, okay, right? So now we'll talk off air after, but there was a particular subject matter that myself and Nana was talking about on our platform. But sometimes when you look at social media, there's always loads of, I don't know whether it's parents, I don't know whether it's fellow practitioners, whether you're from education or CAMS or NHS, but sometimes there's a lot of negative responses, you know. So how would the union, you know, I mean, I don't know, do the press look at that and look at people's comments and what people are saying, and how important is that to you in terms of the feedback, or
like on TikTok, on Instagram?
Yeah, because sometimes when you read these comments, you're thinking, but we're talking about inspiring, we're talking about solutions, and you very often see a lot of negative point of view. So what's your point of view on that? What's your mindset on that?
It's I mean, social media is not really the place to have some of, you know, it's a difficult place to have difficult conversations, and people try, and then actually the purpose of it is to, I think, to kind of express conflicts rather than to explore issues. And there's a certain value in that, and we all, I guess we all kind of know the good and the ill of social media in that regard. But there is. I mean, I think you have to. I personally think you have to kind of swerve sometimes that negativity.
Yes.
Just swerve it and look for the positives. There are times when, you know, if I personally, or if we as an organisation are on social media, and there's a lot coming from a space, maybe it's coming from people who've got this. It's coming from people with lived experience. They've had a social worker in their lives, and it's left them. You know, they've lost a child to the care system or something, and it's left them devastated. Maybe that's the underlying story.
That's the origin. Yeah.
You can't do much about it on Twitter, to be honest. We would try, if it was something substantive, we'd try and take it offline, have a conversation elsewhere. But you have to be quite
thick-skinned.
Thick-skinned. Thank you. That's exactly right. At times, and also, but try and understand it a bit as well. The other thing is there's a lot of people on social media making mischief, and it's not just a marketplace for genuine. It's a marketplace for genuine ideas and genuine pain and all that. It's also a marketplace for people to just stir.
You're absolutely right, Ruth. Because I mean, if, for example, when me and Rob are on TikTok, you might type in social services UK, and it might be social services are corrupt, and you know, even with me and Rob of our podcast, you know, you have people who respond and say you're lying, you're doing this, but then where, Ruth, you're right, you have people in the comments say, actually, no, they're talking about process, and you get people who respond and say, no, Nana and Rob, actually, what they're talking about is right. You can't just go and take a child away. They have to do this, they have to do this, they have to do this. But then there's a lot of people, as what you said earlier, who they've had experience with social services, it's been quite poor for them. They may go and put things on social media, even when a social worker is coming and all those sorts of things. So you're right, you have to look at their point of origin. I think for us, what we try and do, sometimes we respond and we say to people, but you need a bit of context, because I think people post up what they want to be posted up, but they won't really tell you obvious data protection. You can't post everything. No. But there's a context to cases, and what we try and do from our end is that we have people who come on with experience of social services, and they're quite open and honest and say, well, you know, this is what happened, but we're seeing that things are changing. And I think obviously it has to be recognised that people have lived experiences, but if they have a space to speak, they can. But Ruth, you're right, there are people who are saying, no, there's a process they have to follow. There's a referral that's come through. Have they gone through this? Have they gone through that? I think that's quite important to also say as well.
Yeah. But also sometimes by that engagement can create a lot of work, a lot of energy. And in the old days, I would get rattled, say, what are they saying about us? Like that, you know. And then, but it's about taking that time and saying, well, it's not to disrespect it, but there's a lot of trolls out there who are all calculated in their approaches to social media, so they come together and you hit with so many.
John, you're right.
And it's
right.
Now it just goes by me. It's like, well, that's your opinion, but if you want to email me directly and offer me your opinion, I will respond to you.
Yeah, that's right.
If you remember, more so, but I'm interested in that. But I think that it's not a calculated model, but there's a lot of difficult people out there who want to put the expression.
That's right.
And it's not to undermine that, it's just to say
that's right.
To me, it's not the...
That's right.
I
want to ask you both, Ruth and John, about the social student bursaries, because I was trying a lot to campaign. I was unhappy when the government said they'd be freezing the social bursaries. I was fortunate, 10 years ago, the bursary was very useful to me. I used it for travel to placement, any other additional living costs. And what I've actually found is the fact that when I've put, say, the bursary up, the link up, we haven't been able to get the traction that we need for people to sign up for it to be debated.
Yeah.
What is our next steps for the student bursary? Because I'm conscious of the fact that the bursaries is supporting a lot of students regarding the cost of living crisis, but also it's about future generation of social workers. What are SWU and BASW doing at the moment to try and challenge the government? Because I know you are, but I think for context, our audience do need to know what support are we trying to do for there to be a shift or for it to be overturned? Because I'm very, very worried about the bursaries being stripped back.
Yeah, I suppose when you mean bursaries, there's 4 different models because there's 4 different countries.
Yeah.
So each thing's got the interventions, but uniquely they're all suffering because they don't have that infrastructure to give sort of a bursary big payment that's just not means tested.
Yeah.
When I went to university, I got a payment to do my social work masters. It wasn't huge, but it was enough to keep me going. And the difficulty now is that, particularly if you're on placement, then you can't work and you can't earn money. And
There you go.
we all need that. And so I think the whole aspect of bursaries needs to be simplified because there's so many opportunities. You can get a bursary, your application, your special applications. So it's too complex. It's a minefield. And it doesn't take into account the uniqueness of our profession. So to ask me what we're doing about it, we've already made good progress in Wales. We've asked them to adapt to the Masters payment programme, which they agreed.
Excellent.
In Scotland, the politicians are listening. We've had sit-down meetings with ministers
Yeah.
and other levels. I must say, in England, I've been disappointed, particularly from the Labour benches, that they've not returned any of our messages and direct.
You don't know.
Hey, Labour, take note, please.
You have to.
Yeah.
You don't know how many emails
Yeah.
John has sent.
Yeah.
Gosh, yeah.
I mean, to give the Conservative Party the respect, the minister got back to us, who was Helen Wheatley, and highlighted that. Well, it was one of these sort of sandwich one. I understand what's going on, but I'm not going to do nothing about it. So I think we continue to put the pressure on, but the voice of students are important because this is what's happening to students now. They aren't getting the financial support, so they're really struggling at university.
Is it down to funding? Because one of the common themes that we've been talking about for the last couple of hours is money, funding, lack of resources.
Yeah, I mean, the way in which the government's going to support future professions, not just social work, is really, it's a mess at the moment. There isn't. I mean, I know there have been some sort of moves recently to kind of plan the future of the health service, workforce and social work and social care as well. But it's really unclear because there are initiatives here and there, but actually how to really support that number. We need about 4,500 social workers coming into the profession every year in England alone, and then there's more in the other nations. How are we going to keep that going? That's even without high rates of people leaving the profession. That's just because people retire or they move out of practice, and you just need that large number. So I think that the bursaries have not been a high priority, as we know, and it's pretty scandalous they've not been uprated, particularly in the last few years with inflation. And we know, because students tell us what a really, really difficult time many of them are having if they haven't got other monies to rely on. The government's in England is pushing forward a lot on apprenticeships, which is a very legitimate route, and there the local authority or the organisation will fund. Will pay.
Yeah.
So that's definitely it. Then you've got fast tracks, which have got their own funding stream. And people are paid quite a reasonable sum to complete. So it's got fragmented. Another bit of social work, it's got a bit fragmented.
Yeah.
And it's different in children's than in adults because there's more chance for people to get certain things in children's than there is in adult social work now in England. There's certain routes in. So I think we want the bursaries to be uprated, and we want to see a kind of you need to have a look at it in the context of all these different routes in, because they have to they've all got a place, but are they giving us that ultimately the right number of the right people coming in? Is it sustainable? And different students are getting very different access to financial help.
Right.
Do you know, it's crazy. I'm sorry to change the subject a little bit left. Well, not really left. So I just came back from Sweden, and I love traveling, but I'm very intrigued about social work in Sweden or education in Sweden, and I don't know whether you guys know about Sweden. They really invest in their country, and they really invest in their professionals. So I've got a friend, he explained to me the whole school structure. He went to school, went to college, he got money to live on to go to college. He went to university. He got paid an allowance of up to like £1,500 or £1,000 to go university. He then became a teacher. They pay for him to do his teaching qualification. So they heavily invest. And I just thinking, I know that's in Sweden, but sometimes you just think, what the heck happened to the UK? You know, you just think the way they invest. He said to me, if he decided to be a dentist today, they would pay for him to be a dentist.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm just thinking, where we...
Everybody's the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about the lecturers as well at university, it's not just the students that's been cutbacks on the teaching programs. So, you know, even the top-down approach, if the lecturers are not doing the right work, the students are suffering because they've not got enough payments to, to live on. Then, well, how are we setting ourselves up for a profession? We're not, are we?
No, we're not.
But this is quite a new campaign, so I've been really impressed with it. It's gathering momentum, and I would encourage as many students as possible to join both organisations and get active with it. Because
what's our next steps in terms of our campaigns? Obviously, I know this year's ending, but for next year, what are the next steps that we do need to take? Because I'm trying to also encourage students as well.
How can we help?
How can we help? And to the
Yeah.
students to be on board, because we need to get the students on board because they are the voice, they're the future.
to be honest with you, I don't think there will be much change from this political government. I think that they're setting the way. Hopefully not, but I think that we'd still have to argue that case. I think we need to put the argument to a new government that's going to come in, hopefully fairly soon, and to set that scene. It's already part of the Labour Party Social Work Group manifesto. They've highlighted a lot of these issues for the Labour Party. And I think that strength has got to be continued. Again, it goes back to that funding. We have to raise the stories, so we need as many people involved in this campaign as possible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the more voices there are, then folk listen. In Scotland, I mean, the ministers were listening because it was the biggest completed online petition the second biggest they've ever had to the Scottish Parliament.
Wow. It's great.
Yeah, it's excellent. It was in our newsletter as well.
And that raised questions. See, that's where did that come from?
I mean, John and Ruth, is it worth trying again with petition? I've done about 3.
I know.
I've done 3 petitions, and you're right, it's about the students. Is it worth me going again for another petition in terms of the bursaries? Because
maybe we should link up around what, if you're going to do that, then do it in collaboration.
that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So, guys, for anybody who's listening to this podcast episode now, I will be doing another petition again. The social work and the mentor will be doing it, but it will be Social Workers Union and with BASW. We do need you guys as students. We know that you're really, really struggling financially. We are really pushing. John and Ruth are really pushing, but we need you guys to have your voice. Yeah.
Maybe what we'll do, because you know me, I'm all about marketing and branding and ideas and everything. That's just my forte,
good.
right?
Yeah.
Talk to you later.
Yeah. 100.
So, look, we've got to follow him. We get some of them to post some of their experience as being a student. And one thing I love about these, the social worker students, they're so eager. Oh my God. I love it,
Yeah.
I love it. They're very eager.
Yeah.
They're excited.
Yeah.
Are you sure you're ready for this? I'm ready for this. Okay, all right. Yeah. So I
Very
like that though.
enthusiastic, yeah.
So, but at the same time as well, it is important for us to, school them, mentor them, give them the right advice.
We do.
And also, them talking about some of their stories about needing support as a student and why I need this help, and it goes hand in hand with getting these points across. And
absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
And we do know that the universities in England anyway are reporting difficulties in recruiting sufficient students.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there's been like wobbles and concerns, and it's not really come to it that the places have been filled.
Yeah.
But we do need to pay a lot of attention to that.
Yeah.
Because you get different skills and different types of people coming in through the different routes that are available. We could go back to just having one route into social work, but I don't think that's going to happen in England. It's much in the other nations in the UK. It's much more straightforward.
Yeah.
But so many different routes in England.
I think we could also use our marketing skills, because thinking about it, I'm not precious. It's not about the Social Workers Union, BASW, and your own podcast.
Yeah.
It's about getting as many organisations as possible to sign up to it and
There
say,
we
look,
go.
this is a huge issue. So have the Unisons of the world, have the other big unions of the world,
100%.
have the big publications in social work, all saying like, this is wrong, instead of all doing your own thing. So let's come together.
Absolutely.
That's what we need.
That's what we need.
Because if we're not funding education for social work, we're not funding. We know we're not funding education for the other professions.
That's
as
right.
is needed.
That's
It's
right.
a collective problem.
That's right. Guys, before we go and close the episode, I want to ask John and Ruth for any closing statements. It's been amazing having you both for both episodes. Any closing statements from yourselves for social workers who are feeling down, students who might feel, I want to leave, for social workers? What is your parting message to them from BASW and from SWU?
Well, my own message is in my own career path that there's been difficult times in social work, but by being focused on what you're trying to achieve in your career path, it is possible. But it's also possible if you're aware of what's going on in you and you need to reflect on that, the difficulties you're having. Take the support of BASW and SWU and sign up if you've not signed up. That would be a clear message. But also, I suppose our organisations are only as good as the folk who are involved with us. So we need to be active with you in collaboration. So don't pass it on to SWU and BASW because we need your voice. That's the most important voice because it's you as a student or it's you as a social worker. We're there to advocate for you and to get that argument out, but we need you involved with us.
Thank you, John. Ruth?
Well, I think this podcast is a really good illustration, actually. I mean, you doing this podcast, you creating this, is a really good illustration of one of the things that's great that's happening in social work now, changes that are happening in social work, different ways of talking about social work, different ways of bringing people together, like you bring people together through the podcast. And I think there's a huge amount to feel really positive about how new students are coming through, new social workers are coming through, seasoned, I love that word you use all the time, seasoned social workers are finding new energy from things like new ways of communicating and new ways of expressing some of the difficult things that have been hard to express. Social workers have often been actually been prevented from speaking out by local authorities, to be frank. We haven't talked about that. So
We should have spoken about it.
Did you know? Yeah.
I just said it. Another podcast.
I don't know why we didn't speak about it.
It's been mentioned and actually we need to be able to speak out. We need to be able to find ways of speaking out. And you're doing that through this podcast, and there's other people now who are really finding different platforms, which is really fresh and really positive. And certainly through BASW, through SWU, that's another platform for people to find their voice.
Absolutely.
To hear them, hopefully to hear themselves reflected in what we say, to influence what we say by being members, and to have platforms to speak for themselves. Yeah. And that's really, really important. And I see so much more of that than there was 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I think that's all great. So there's great things happening in social work. It can be a hard profession, but massively rewarding.
Thank you very much.
Join us 2 for 1.
Thank you very much, John and Ruth. And guys, as a parting message from me, for students and for social workers, please, can you register with BASW and please register with the Social Workers Union. Everything that Ruth and John have said is golden, and I really want you to heed what they are saying about your emotional well-being, your physical well-being, but also your job, and also just being very much supported. And to my fellow managers as well, for anybody who's listening and directors, John and Ruth said it in the last episode, we need to be very much supportive and have the duty of care for our social work teams and for those who are on the ground who are doing fantastic work. That's it. I'm Rob.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Guys, like, subscribe, share. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.